This is the Climate Flow podcast, and today's guest is Jeff Vargen. Now, he's a filmmaker based in the USA, and the reason that I'm having a chat with him today is that when I did the interview with Mark Smith and Richard Jensen, he got into contact because he's the guy that made the film Assault on El Cap. So he contacted me and we thought it was a great idea to have a chat. So I'll let you listen to the podcast. So this is the Climate Flow podcast and this is the 32nd episode. And today's guest is none other than Jeff Vargen.
Oh,
Now,
oh,
I
oh,
have
one
been,
sec.
yes,
Vargin, soft
Vargen,
G. Yeah,
Vargen. Sorry, I do apologize.
that's okay.
And I don't have much information on you, Jeff, but what I have found is that you are a filmmaker, you are an author, and a creative storyteller. Now, I don't know whether you climb or not, and it's unusual for us to interview someone who isn't in the limelight, but I guess if you could introduce yourself, you'll probably do a better job.
Oh, okay. My name is Jeff Vargen. I am a climber. Well, I'll say I climb.
Okay.
Um, I started climbing in 1976, so a
Okay.
long time ago,
Yeah.
long before sticky rubber and cams, and we long before harnesses. We were using Swami belts and gold line ropes back in those days, and
Yeah.
climbing in boots. So, yeah, I started climbing a long time ago. It was a passion, but never something that I pursued to the next level. This was the 70s and 80s when, professional climbing was just starting to get a foothold. And by sort of the traditional climbers, that was kind of looked at a little bit out of your side eye, like these people are profiting off of this traditionally, sort of passion sport.
Yeah.
So, go through that. The bolting wars of Yosemite Valley was an interesting time, and the Stone Masters were going at it. And I was in the valley at that time, but I certainly was not part of the Stone Master or the Camp 4 crowd. That was a little too intimidating. We were just sort of weekend warriors, and my friends and I just going out sort of learning how to climb. Um, and then I climbed for a bit, and then I went off to college and played some other sports in college and started filmmaking and did that for decades and decades and decades before I ever did anything climbing related. I never wanted to mix my two things. I wanted to keep my hobby separate from my profession.
Why is
Um,
that?
um, Stupid, really. I mean, why wouldn't I combine the two things that I really love? But I was afraid that it would tarnish my love of climbing and wouldn't give
Yeah.
me a full escape. I wouldn't have a real vacation if I was
Yeah.
always going into the mountains with my camera as opposed to
Yeah.
just going to hike or climb. And
Yeah.
so that all eventually merged into I did some auto racing films and I did a whole bunch of other things. I did some television work. And then a climbing film fell into my lap. And
And how did it
I
fall
just,
into your lap?
I just had to do it. I was in New York City on vacation with my family, and Ammon McNeely called me on the phone.
Okay. And how do you
And
know how do you know Ammon?
how do I know Ammon? I just knew Ammon from being around. I was,
Okay.
I was in the valley a lot. I only live about 3 hours from Yosemite Valley, so
Okay.
it wasn't uncommon to go there for a day trip or certainly for a weekend. But I spent, often 2, 3, 4 weekends a month in the valley, and you hang around El Cap Bridge and you meet other people, and um, one thing led to another, and somehow I met Ammon and we became friends.
Yeah.
Uh, I had known him for a few years and we'd climbed a little bit together. I was in New York City on vacation, as I said, and he called me on the phone and he said, "Do you have a bolt kit I can borrow?" And I said, "Nah, I just sold mine. I don't have a bolt kit. I'm not climbing anything with bolts anymore or that I'm going to place." Um, and I said, "Oh, we'll call some of these other friends. Maybe they've got one." And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, Kate and I are going to go do Wings of Steel." And this is July.
Okay, so for the listeners out there, so Ammon McNeely is or I say was an extremely well, how should I say it? He was a really incredible aid climber in the Yosemite Valley and has had some incredible ascents under his belt. And aid climbing goes from A1 all the way up to A5, and he was
Hmm.
regularly climbing A5 routes, which means that there's a potential for extremely big falls on very marginal
Hmm.
gear.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And he was at that time also into speed climbing big walls. There was a movement at the time
yeah,
before sort of the free climbers went after these big walls. There was a movement to speed aid climb these things.
yeah,
So they were climbing, 4-day A4 routes in 24 hours, 36 hours. I mean, just incredible stuff.
yeah.
Um, so he was sort of at the forefront of what they were called sort of the next evolution of the Stone Masters. They were called the Stone Monkeys. It's a whole group of them in the 80s that were, base jumping and they were climbing hard and they were doing all kinds of things. So anyway, Ammon calls me and he says he's doing Wings of Steel, which I knew had not been done for 29 years. No one had attempted it. Well, it had been
So,
attempted, but nobody got more than a couple pitches.
so Wings of Steel is a route that was climbed. I can't remember the exact date. Was it early 80s?
Yeah, like 83, 84.
Yeah, so it had its first ascent in 83, 84,
Hmm.
climbed by Mark Smith and Richard Jensen,
Hmm.
and nobody had done a second ascent.
No, a couple have been attempted, but nobody had ever done a complete ascent.
Okay.
No. Um, so it had been 29 years since somebody had tried. So I knew that slab well. I knew it from hiking past it a million times. The sun hits it almost all day long. It's really hot. And Yosemite Valley is very, very warm in the summertime. It can be in Fahrenheit anywhere between 80 degrees and 100 degrees.
Yeah.
It's a very warm. So I said, "You're going to climb the slab in July in the heat?" And he goes, "Yeah, Kate and I have a little bit of time and we're going to do it." So, and Kate was his girlfriend at the time, and she'd climbed 2 or 3 big walls with him previously. She didn't have a lot of big wall experience.
Okay.
So it meant he was going to be leading every pitch.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a little wild. And he goes, "Yeah, well, we've got some time." I said, "How long do you think it's going to take?" He said, "I think it'll take us a week. We'll be fine." So actually, it started to swell online that he was doing this. And back in the day, there was a climbing forum called Super Topo, and
Okay.
it was just a message board, which is still there, I believe, but you can't contribute it to it anymore. And Wings of Steel was one of the reasons why this message board no longer exists.
Oh,
Um,
really? Why? So why is that? Give me the history of Wings of Steel.
well, Wings of Steel was a very controversial route in the 80s. Two guys, Richard Jensen and Mark Smith, came to the valley to climb this incredible climb that they had their eye on.
Yeah.
They weren't valley locals. The valley was kind of provincial at the time. Almost if you know or seen surfing movies, it was kind of like that. Surfers have their beach, and it's tough to break into that area.
Okay. So that was at the time of the stonemasons. So yeah.
The
So
stone, yeah.
it was a group of supposedly, I guess, elite climbers, I guess, maybe self-made climbers who climb at a high level, who hang out, I guess, in Camp 4, which is the infamous camp in Yosemite,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, who, who took it upon themselves to, I guess, call themselves the keepers of El Cap, maybe.
I don't know
Not
if they.
officially.
Yeah, yeah, they were sort of the keepers of the whole valley. They
Okay.
were the ones putting up the first ascents. They were pushing the limits. They were pushing hard stuff, and I think and I can't speak for them, but it seems like they really felt like they had established a way of climbing and an ethic of climbing.
Yeah.
And when Richard and Mark came and took on this slab, which none of them had ever climbed, they assumed that they had to be doing tactics to get up that slab that were not appreciated by the rest of the guys.
Okay.
Sort of, too artificial or too, for whatever reason. They had all kinds of reasons. None of them really were valid. They didn't really know what was going on up there with these
Yeah.
guys. They just knew the guys were taking a long time, and if they took a long time, they must be incompetent.
Yeah. So,
None of which was true.
yeah. So artificial meaning. So with aid climbing, you're using climbing equipment to gain height, and artificial you mean by drilling bolt holes and either drilling holes for your climbing gear to go into, or kind of drilling holes for to place bolts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And um, they felt, the community at the time, some of them felt that they were just drilling their way up this slab, and it was a bolt ladder, or,
Yeah.
going to be a bat hook ladder, something, that was really, really artificially created.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a big deal. I mean, there was big articles in the climbing press about this and about these guys doing this, and the whole community, the
Yeah.
whole world was turning on these guys because nobody knew what was going on, but they listened to the reports of these guys on the ground. And I was one of them. I was climbing the valley at that time, and I remember those guys being up there, and we all just like, what are those guys doing? They don't know what. It was
Yeah.
this group think that happened.
Yeah.
There was a very, very, very small group of people who took it to the next level and really caused harm to those guys. Um, but the public opinion was all against them,
Okay.
and we didn't know anything about that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what kind of harm are you talking about?
Well, as they, I made Assault on El Capitan, the film about the climb, and it's documented in there. They threw
Okay.
things at them. They cut their ropes. If they were down for a day, as they were, setting up fixed lines, they would corner them in the forest and threaten them. Um, Death threats. People were throwing stuff at them from above. It was a very, very, very dangerous and scary situation. I
Yeah.
mean, if it was happening today, people would be in jail for long amounts of time for doing
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean that's in one respect that's quite incredible that Mark and Richard still continued on no matter what the abuse that they received, and the abuse that they received was invalid because nobody knew what was really going on.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
and I
nobody.
guess, like you said, it's like a herd mentality. A small group starts and everyone goes along with it.
Right. And this is, the early 1980s, so no social media.
Yeah.
Climbing press was very sporadic. Climbing magazine at the time came out 6 times a year.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to read something about climbing, you waited every other month. So when the article came out about these guys in the climbing press, it was going to be months before there was going to be a rebuttal or there was going to be any information. They would have been long off the climb. So
Yeah.
the climbing press was so slow to catch up. It was years sometimes before you'd hear about a really big climb. If
Yeah.
someone like yourself is going out for months at a time to do climbs, you come back with the information. Somebody's going to write an article. It's not getting into the press for 6 or 7 months after you've done what you've
Yeah.
done. It's not like today where it's happening live streamed,
Yeah. And it's
you know?
instant. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ammon mentioned to you that he was going to do the second ascent of Wings of Steel.
Right. And they did. And Kate's mother and Kate were communicating all the way through. So Kate's mother was posting their progress on Super Topo and letting people know how they were doing.
Okay.
They were preserving battery power for their phones and all that.
Yeah.
This is, mid 2010. So there wasn't the technology even now. So they were posting and everybody was following them. And they finished the climb. It took them 14 days. They thought it was going to take them 7. So it took them 14. They got off. And, then the question was, what did they find up there?
Yeah.
So, um, the climbing press was interested in it. So Ammon did write an article for Climbing Magazine. And I think even for The Alpinist, there's a couple articles he wrote out about the climb.
Yeah.
And I was home one day and he lived, sort of right on my way to Yosemite. And he called me and he said, stop by the house when you're coming. But I was going up that weekend. He goes, stop by the house. I want to show you some pictures. We took a lot of pictures up there. So I did. We stopped by and we're looking through the pictures. And I said, what are you going to do with it all? And they shot a bunch of video too. And he goes, I don't know. We'll edit something together for YouTube, do something like that.
Yeah.
And I go, maybe we should do something more than just this.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's cool. So I said, let me think about it. So we looked through all the pictures and I looked through the video and I said, yeah, we can edit. Let's do like a 10 or 15 minute little video and do a little more polished. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. So we're going to work on that. Then I started to think, I said, why don't we call some of our friends and see what they have to say about this climb?
Yeah.
And that's a good idea. So virtually everybody who's in the film is either our friend, one of my friends, one of Ammon's friends, or our mutual friends. I mean, we
Yeah.
knew everybody
Yeah.
except for Richard and Mark. We didn't know them, the first ascent team.
Okay.
We'd never had any contact with them. Still not really believing, not knowing anything about them really, because they hadn't been back to the valley that we knew of. So again, and this is 30 years later. So I looked at it and we started calling our friends. And so we started shooting some interviews and maybe we got something more here. And the project started to expand. And I said, it really is not going to work at all if we're going to this level, if we don't have the first ascensionists.
Yeah.
And so I contacted Richard and Mark, who I did not know, had never spoken to them, no contact with them at all. They didn't know we were doing this film.
Yeah.
And I explained, Ammon just did this climb, which they were aware of. And I said, I'm making a film on the second ascent. Would you guys like to be in the film talking about the first ascent?
Yeah.
And they both, without speaking to each other, without speaking too long, both said immediately yes. And
Okay.
I thought that is incredibly brave. And I still think it's incredibly brave
Yeah.
because they, at that moment, had no idea what kind of film I was going to make.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
very likely could have been making a film to make them look very bad and pump up Ammon, or I could have manipulated it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
But
just trusted that I wasn't going to do that. And I had no intention of doing that, but
but
they
but I
didn't know that.
but I guess so it's also brave of them having done the first ascent in 83 or 84 and then having had all this abuse and all these bad articles and all this bad press kind of done about them to then go to be filmed and interviewed to be part of this film. That's, I guess, in some ways it might have been cathartic, but in other ways it might also kind of bring in all that stuff back into the limelight again.
And they're very intelligent men,
Yeah.
very intelligent. Richard has a PhD in philosophy. Mark is a college professor. These guys are not idiots.
No.
They knew I would have the power to edit this thing any way I wanted. And
Yeah.
if I wanted it to come out so they didn't look so good, it could have been that way.
Yeah.
But as we talked about it, I think they got the impression that wasn't my plan.
Yeah.
I was not looking to, it wasn't a hit piece on them. They were a subplot to my main story.
Yeah.
So we flew them to Yosemite and interviewed them in the park, and then did one interview with Kate and Ammon and Richard and Mark in the meadow, the only four people to have ever climbed
Yeah.
Assault or Wings of Steel. So
Still
we
to this
did
still to this
still to
day.
this day, still to
Okay.
this day.
But there has
Um,
been no third ascent.
I don't believe, and I could be wrong because they could
Yeah.
climb out of the woodwork, but usually you hear about it. I have not heard of even a second attempt, a
Okay.
third attempt.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and there's lots of reasons why people say that. People say, well, and it's not a very good climb. And it seems to be from people that it's less about it being it's about the quality of the climb rather than the controversy of the climb. But, it is a climb that you're going to take, long, long falls every single day if you do that. And you just have
Yeah.
to be willing to do that.
Yeah, so maybe I don't know. So like I'll never climb Wings of Steel. That's way above my pay grade. But I can only assume that maybe some people wouldn't climb it. One, because there's going to be some big falls, and there might be some falls with the potential for hurting yourself, or it might be to do, especially if we turn the clock back for the guys that were the stone masons at the time, who maybe didn't want to climb it because of an ego thing. Because if they did climb it and realize, and this is only an assumption I'm making, if they did climb it and realize that it was as hard as Mark and Richard and Ammon and Kate said it is, then it's going to be their ego that's affected, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
these people that were considered to be hard climbers would then, in the eye of the media, to be seen as not so hard climbers.
right, right. I think, and Ammon said this when he came off the climb. He thinks if it was free, if somebody free climbed it, it might go at around 512, which
Yeah,
is an accessible grade for
yeah,
many Yosemite climbers.
yeah,
The question is, if you do that, if you free climb it, would you have to wrap down and wrap bolt that slab?
yeah,
Because it's all hooks. You're doing entire pitches of maybe 50 hook moves in a row.
yeah,
So there's no, the only bolts really that are there are at the anchors.
yes,
So, if you're going to free climb it, you're going to take 150-foot falls maybe,
yeah.
you know, uh,
On a slab.
on a slab. So even when Ammon climbed it, which he never really climbed with knee pads and elbow pads or anything like that. He had plastic, like hockey style knee pads and elbow pads because when you fell because of the slope, you're just going to slide for 50 and 60 feet down this slab. You're just going to
Yeah, yeah,
scrape yourself, tear yourself up.
yeah, yeah. You would. Yeah.
At one point, he fell and the rope was caught under his arm and he dislocated his shoulder.
Oh my God.
So he basically said, let me take a half a day's rest, popped it back in, and he was climbing the next day. Um, so,
That's very Ammon
this,
style.
well, yeah, it's very Ammon. I mean, if the stories of his, bail up was his philosophy. It's
Yeah,
easier to go up than it is to go down. Even the last climb he did of El Cap, he did with his son Austin. And this is after he had a leg amputation from a base jumping accident.
yeah.
He was at the top pitch and a half, two pitches on their portaledge at night and dropped his leg off of El Cap. So the fake leg fell to the ground. A guy found it, hiked up the east ledges all the way to the top, lowered it back down to him, and then he finished the climb.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant story. Yeah, yeah. Ammon was completely out there, wasn't he?
He was a very interesting man, and
Yeah,
the mythology and the legend around him grows, and he's not always portrayed the way I remember him,
yeah. Of
which is
course.
unfortunate.
Yeah, so I guess thinking about Ammon and having seen either read some interviews or see some footage of Ammon, it's very easy to look at him and think that he's a bit of a nutcase when it comes to his climbing. But I think beyond that, when you pay careful attention, he looks like a very deep thinker and a sensitive soul.
He was a wonderful man,
Yeah.
and the perception of him on camera and the sort of wild-eyed look in his eye and
Yeah,
sort of these wild things he was doing, he very much understood the Ammon McNeely character versus Ammon McNeely.
yeah,
So if they're going to put a camera on him and they're going to pay him a lot of money to take some big whip or fall, he'll do it and he'll play Ammon McNeely.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But when he was sitting on my couch and staying with me for weeks at a time, that's not the Ammon McNeely who we
yeah,
spent time with every day.
yeah,
That's not the Ammon McNeely I climbed with. One of the reasons, and I think this is underappreciated, especially now when people are taking big risks. Um, what Ammon took were risks, but they were very calculated risks. When I was climbing with him, and at this point I'd been climbing 35, 40 years and I
yeah,
survived, so I had to be doing something okay.
yeah,
Um, I had never in my life climbed with somebody as safe as Ammon. And I mean checking as I tied in, checking and double checking my knot, checking and double checking his knot, the anchors. I mean, it was a constant awareness of where he was, what was happening. And if he was secure in everything at the mechanical end, he could push the limits as a climber because
Yeah.
he knew he was going to be safe. He knew he could take a long fall and this anchor was going to hold.
Yeah.
So his attention to safety and detail allowed him to take what many people thought were extreme risks,
Yeah.
but to him were not very risky.
Yeah.
The risk comes in if you don't have your backup plan,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he did die climbing, and he climbed some hard stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 I guess that there's something to learn in there, isn't there? Um, I guess to making sure that everything is 100%. I like that. I like that. I think when I have done aid climbing and solo aid climbing, I've just got into a system where I don't feel I need to check it, and you kind of go into a flow where I check it once and I feel 100% comfortable that I know what I'm doing, and I quite like that. But I like what you just said about Ammon to double check everything just because it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long, does it? Just to
no,
double check everything.
it takes less time than that as it's going to take you to die.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You
That's
know,
true.
you just and you get to the experience of Ammon and your experience. It's just a glance. Look, test, test, and you're on. You're talking about 10 seconds and you're moving on. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like we are retying every knot and we're relooking and we're set. No, when you set it up the first time, it's right. And then you do a check to make sure it's right. And then before you leave on the next lead, you check again. And the changeovers at these belays are still fairly quick. I mean, Ammon's moving very quickly. When
Yeah.
you climb with Ammon, you don't bring much water, you don't bring much food, you don't bring much gear.
Yeah.
You're going to go quick. You're going to move along.
But
So
that's because he's confident in his systems.
absolutely confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which means that he doesn't have to think twice. I think where when you first get into aid climbing, if you're definitely not used to it, it's very easy to not really to think a little bit about the physical. So what I mean is that you can see that the gear is good or pretty good, but then the emotional comes into play and prevents you from moving that quickly. And it sounds like Ammon just looked at the gear, knew it was good, and was potentially able to switch off those emotions that didn't dictate to him what he could or couldn't do. He was looking at the physical side of it.
Yeah. I think there was something different about his brain. And I think this about some of the free soloists that are at the top of their game.
Okay.
There's a level of focus and a level of concentration that they're able to turn off the fear.
Yeah.
So they're aware of danger, but they're not afraid of it.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of the height. They're not afraid of the position or the exposure. You take that level out of your climbing, all of a sudden climbing becomes very, very different.
Yeah.
If you don't feel the 3,000-foot open exposure of El Capitan, if that doesn't bother you at all, and there's very few people that can say that doesn't bother me at all, you can be awe-inspired. It can make your heart go up into your throat. There's a lot of things it can do, not to necessarily stop you, but Ammon at his level, it was a non-factor. It was
Yeah.
no different than climbing a set of stairs, 3 stairs up versus 3,000 feet up, same thing.
Yeah.
And his ability, his inability to feel pain, I think, was a real issue. I think
Yeah.
his how tough he was. I mean, there was a time he took a long fall and had a skull fracture and had brain matter oozing from his skull. He climbed back. He put his helmet was cracked after the fall. They were calling the rescue. They were headed there. He waved them off. He climbed for 5 more days, got off the mountain, came down, never did go to the doctor. He had a dent in his head that you could feel. You know, he's like, hey, I didn't have insurance. I had a dent in my head. I talked to a nurse in the valley, said, oh, it'll heal up, but you should go to the doctor. Ah, fine. You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Wow.
this is a guy who on his first descent of El Capitan had never climbed a big wall before.
Yeah.
And he went around and he scrounged a set of nuts and went and soloed the North American Wall with a
Wow.
set of nuts that he scrounged. And he spent most of his time rappelling, just back cleaning to try to
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And he'd never climbed a wall before. So this is a guy with a different way of looking at things,
Different breed.
a different breed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can be inspired by that, but I don't think you can try to emulate it. I
Yeah.
mean, there's people that can, but it's an internal thing that allows you to do that. I could not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Climbing with him, I felt very secure, but I'm still insecure in a big wall 8 situation because I've only done a few walls
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
haven't done enough where I'm still feeling like I'm at home. It's still weird up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Still quite high, intimidating and hard work and
Right. Hard work,
emotional
yeah.
and all those things.
And knowing on day 2 you got 3 more days to go, and you're like, I don't even think I can get through this day,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean, big walling is like it's like a complete sufferfest where you're grinding all day long. And if you're not climbing, you're either hanging on a belay stance, say you're uncomfortable, you're on the sharp end, or you're hauling. So, and even when you get to the end of the day, you're still having to set up camp, whether that's a porter ledge or sleeping on a ledge and cooking and all that stuff. So, it is really, really, really hard work. Yeah.
right. And if you're slow and you haven't got to your belay, you're climbing at night. You're
Yeah.
climbing in the dark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually knew a couple big wall climbers that only climbed in the dark because they didn't like the exposure. They didn't like to look down. So climbing at night, they never saw how high they were. And they just every night they climbed, every day they slept, and
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not
they
sure
did
I could
all
do that.
yeah, they had a great time. They climbed a lot of walls like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few experiences where I've been extremely high up in the dark, and it's amazing that with a torch, all you can see is where you shine your light, and you have
Right.
absolute no clue how high you are.
Yeah, yeah. And in aid climbing, you're hanging on gear anyway.
Yeah,
So it's not like you have to search for a hold. You're just plugging in gear or
yeah,
clipping a bolt or hanging
yeah,
on a hook or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Just to give you a little idea of how incredible just even the first 2 pitches of Wings of Steel are. Ammon was, and I'm not talking out of school, Ammon enjoyed a drink now and then,
yeah,
and he enjoyed having a beer on the wall. And sometimes that alcohol became a little bit of courage.
yeah,
We climbed after the climb was done. We went back to shoot some pickup shots of him, and most of the footage on the wall he and Kate shot. I shot the interviews, and then we shot some stuff on the first couple of pitches. So we went up there one day, and he climbed the first uh, 2 pitches and hung a rope so that I could jug up and then film him reclimbing the first pitches for the film. So this is about 10 in the morning, and I notice he's already drinking. And I'm like, well, what are you doing, man? And he goes, well, I forgot my hooks. And I said, well, I have my hooks. I have my set. His set of hooks had been filed to a fine point
yeah,
to hit these micro edges. They were super modified. I just had right off the rack hooks.
yeah,
So he was going to have to use my hooks on this, arguably maybe some of the crux stuff of hooking. So he grabbed my hooks. He's probably got 5 or 6 beers in him by now.
yeah.
And so he sets off. And he made the first 2 pitches in 45 minutes,
Wow.
which seems slow when you're climbing 2 pitches. But when he climbed it sober for the very first time, it took him 3 hours to climb those
Yeah.
same pitches. So a little bit of liquid courage and a tiny little bit of experience, you cut that time in half. So,
Wow.
um, it's you stand there and you see there's a bolt about 8 feet up, and you see that bolt, but you don't even know how you're going to get to that bolt. And
Yeah.
then above it is just blank. So as I was shooting, I was hanging on the rope next to him, and he was coming across. He was doing this tall traverse. I could hear the hooks creaking on the edges. And we're talking about micro edges. These are the size of the edge of a coin,
Yeah.
not flat, the edge.
Yeah.
And these hooks, and he's hanging on there, and he's moving from hook to hook so slowly, and I am just dying. I mean, I could hear them creaking, and I'm thinking, don't step on this. Granted, I'm filming. This is fourth film, and I know
Yeah.
that I need this footage. But I think I was much more apprehensive and fearful than he was
Yeah.
climbing that thing. So, his level of precise expertise was it was the best I've ever seen. I don't
Yeah.
know if it was the best ever, but he was something special.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to climb that quickly on like coin size edges with hooks. And I guess watching on, right, that must be really just nerve-wracking because something goes wrong. If he's high up enough, he's going to hit the ground.
Yeah, it was a ground fall if he fell, no
Yeah,
question. It
yeah,
was going to be a 40-foot ground fall.
yeah, yeah. And he moves over two pitches in 45 minutes. That's incredible.
All right.
Yeah, and I,
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit like maybe I'm drawing parallels with the team that filmed Alex Honnold doing Free Solo, who
Hmm.
there were certain sections that they didn't want to watch um, Alex climb just in case something went wrong. And I guess you're in that same position where Ammon's climbing and like something goes wrong, he's going to hit the ground and it's not going to be pretty.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we certainly didn't have the budget that they had for
yeah,
what they were doing.
yeah,
My filmmaking style, which is much different from those guys and what they do.
yeah,
I really I watch those films, and the guys that made Free Solo are amazing filmmakers, and it's a great film. And I watch climbing films, but I don't care about what people do. I
yeah,
really couldn't care less about what they climb.
yeah,
I only care about why they do it.
yeah,
So one of the criticisms my films often get are, oh, there's no action, there's no falls, there's no, I don't care. You can go, there's a lot of films you can go watch the big falls.
yeah. But
I don't,
the story behind Assault on El Cap isn't the falls. The story is Ammon doing the second ascent of Wings of Steel, which there was a lot of controversy about the route and the story about, I guess indirectly, the story about Mark and Richard, who got so much abuse, and Ammon affirming that the route was as difficult as they say it was without it having been artificially bolted.
right,
So,
right.
I mean, you then compiled this film with that footage,
Hmm.
and I guess then what happened?
Um, it was interesting because as I said, I'm not a sponsored filmmaker. I
Yeah,
don't get money from big outdoor equipment companies.
yeah,
Generally, I have an idea and I make the film.
yeah,
And, if somebody wants to help me out and give me some money for that, that would be fantastic.
yeah,
But that's generally not what I seek.
yeah,
Because I'm not doing these big sort of elaborate fall-based 514 sport, I'm doing human-based stories.
yeah,
So whether he be climbing a mountain or whether I've done, you know, films on race drivers or why you're racing, like it's why you do it, which interests me.
yeah, yeah,
The human interaction with these dangers and these things and these choices. That's what interests me. So weaving the story around their motivations and how they get to where they are is what really interests me. And it's a way that I, as a small filmmaker, have accessible projects because I don't need, in fact, I'm starting a film just after the new year where I'm going to shoot 99% of it myself,
yeah,
um, because it's just one of these things that the interviews I'm going to do are going to be so personal that I don't want anybody else there. I don't want anybody else to know about what's going on. I
yeah,
just want to make this thing the way I want to make it. And it's going to be, however it's going to turn out, but I'm just going to make it my way. But this film in particular, when it came out, because I wasn't well known, Ammon had this kind of controversial thing. It was very, very difficult to get anyone to watch it and get anybody I couldn't get any of the climbing press to review it. I couldn't get them to even read it or watch it, because when I would send it to them or I would ask them, I would inquire, my response from most of them was, "We don't review climbing films," which
Okay.
is just flatly not true
That's
because they
that's
do it all
that's
the
a
time.
that's a load of bullshit.
Right. So they said, well, we won't do that. And then,
So
the Super Topo forums were going. I think there was still some backlash about Richard and Mark. There was still some apprehension about Ammon. How much of his lifestyle was I going to put into this? I'm not sure why,
so
but
they
I
hadn't
got
so these companies hadn't watched your film.
no.
No. So they just turned around and said no.
No, we
Uh,
won't watch it. We won't review it. Because we don't review climbing films,
Okay,
which
so
is
I'd
not
love to
true.
know what their motivation was to say no. They might. I don't believe that. I think, yeah. Sorry, I cut you
Uh,
short.
I think I think some of it is that I wasn't a sponsored filmmaker. I
Yeah,
don't advertise in their magazines.
yeah.
So, some of it was a business decision of why would we put resources on this film when we could do it on that film that is sponsored by a big equipment company who's also one of our advertisers.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
yeah.
It's gone to a couple of film festivals and did well. And I went to one film festival, and I thought it was interesting that they gave the award for best climbing film the night before the film that won aired for the first time ever. I mean,
So say that again.
so it was a climbing film festival, an
Yeah.
outdoor film festival, and I was in a category with another film, and that film won best film of the festival before it officially aired, before it officially screened. It wasn't going to have the premiere until the following night, and they
Okay.
gave it the best film before it even aired.
Why?
And because they sponsored the festival.
Oh,
They
what? Okay. So
and
so
if I
so.
told you who it was, you would know, but I'm not going to tell you because
I,
it's sort of the MO. And then
I'm
it
intrigued now,
would
Jeff.
it was because when I spoke to the filmmaker, it was quite hilarious. He tried to sort of Hollywood me, he had this entourage, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? You're making climbing films. You have an entourage? He had all these sort of young climbers around him, and like someday maybe you'll make a film about me. But
So what was the outdoor venue? The outdoor venue, and what year was it?
I I I will tell you at another time. I can't tell you. It
Okay.
would be too obvious, and I still do enter festivals, so no, I don't
Okay,
want.
fair enough. I
So
don't want to get you into trouble,
yeah,
Jeff. Yeah.
I did a film a few years ago with Andy Torbett, who is a presenter in the UK, does a lot of adventure stuff.
Andy Torbett.
Um, yeah, he's a skydiver and scuba dive. I mean, he's an adventure dude. So
Okay.
anyway, long story short, so I started to get some backlash from the climbing community because even though Ammon finished this, they didn't necessarily. Some people did not believe what Ammon was telling them.
Okay.
Um, and then because Ammon was well known, some of these other guys that are in film were well known. Ron Calk's in the film. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are really well known that are in the movie, which were just acquaintances of mine. So
Yeah.
they I got accused of me not being famous enough to have the right to make a film about famous climbers.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to get famous, but it's never been one of my goals. Anyway, so I started to get a lot of backlash and started to get some real threats to me about that I was making this film that was just lies and lies and lies, and Ammon and I were conspiring to retell this story in a different way, and I mean it's all just incredible. So this one guy was really going after me hard, and he started the threats were starting to get a little more dramatic and a little more serious.
How do you mean? What kind of threats?
Oh, he would say things like, if I see you in the park, we're gonna have a discussion, or you wouldn't dare do this if you saw me in person, or you wouldn't dare talk to me about this. I mean, it's like, and I knew who he was. I found out who he really was because he was using an avatar online.
Yeah. So
And
you don't want to tell
so
me
I
who?
sort of knew, and I knew he was a bit you know, a bit aggressive
Yeah.
as a human being.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine. He goes, Jeff, don't talk to this guy. He says, I'll talk to him. I'll tell him because he goes, he actually tried to climb Wings of Steel once, and he made it a couple pitches and came down. He says, past the Piton Peak. Uh, and he goes, I'll reach out to him and I'll tell him that what you're doing is legit and blah, blah, blah. So he did that a couple times. And then he called me and he goes, I can't talk to that guy anymore. He goes, that guy scares me to death. He says, I'm afraid that if I show up in the valley, he's going to show up and punch me or
Right.
show up and do something. And I said, okay, I'll take it. I'll take it from here. So I sent him an email. I said, I will be on the bridge at noon on Saturday. If you got something to say, there, I will be there.
Yeah.
And he never showed up and I never heard from him again. So he's just a internet bully.
Yeah.
But he had been a guy who had been very aggressive and caused other people some real problems in the past. So
Yeah.
I figured, well, let's see if this guy's, if
So
he's all top.
so this guy's a climber?
He was at one time a very good climber and a very respected climber.
Okay.
But
So you're obviously
he,
not going to
yeah,
tell me his name.
no, because he would have been not publicly known. He was well known within the climbing community as having
Okay.
done hard stuff a bit, but he was also known as a bit of a loose cannon, and people didn't want to deal with him
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they were a little bit scared of him.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of anybody.
Okay.
So
Good. Yeah.
bring it on.
Yeah. Well
You want
done.
to come and talk to me about my film? Here I am.
Yeah.
So
So you put this film out there, and apart from him, did you get any other negative comments, feedback?
no, we took it on tour. We did a tour of the West Coast of like climbing associations up and down the West Coast, and we had big crowds, and it did great, and got distribution worldwide, and the film has done great over the
Yeah.
years. And ironically, the place that told me they didn't um, review films or wouldn't watch the film about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they listed it as one of the top 10 climbing films to watch. So I think I was number five on the list. So,
Okay.
okay. So,
Okay. Okay. So
but it isn't a traditional, go watch these guys. I find climbing films a lot to be boring. And there's a lot of watching paint dry. Um, I don't care
yeah.
really. Oh, you made that move. Great. I can't make that move. And so I don't really understand how hard that is. So,
Yeah. I
whatever.
guess
Um,
so. I've seen, and I'm not going to name any names. So I've seen some people do some, I guess some famous climbers. They come and do some talks about, I guess, some of the stuff that they've done. They do presentation. They like watch a few video clips and stuff. And the ones that I've seen where they talk about, and I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that, they kind of get a bit boring. I think what as an audience member and even watching a film, what you want is you want a relatable story. You want to get to know the person, and you want it to be a human story, right? And I think when you make that
right.
human story, it makes it much easier to connect with.
Yeah. And I find people who have a little wider range of interests that aren't just climbing.
Yeah,
Ammon was an amazing artist, an incredible artist. He could have
yeah,
made a living as an artist. He was a wonderful writer.
yeah,
I have a friend who lives in your neck of the woods, Pete Whitaker.
yeah,
And Pete has half his gear in my garage. So when he comes to the USD Yosemite, he stops in here, picks up his gear, stays a day or two, and we have a lot of fun chit chat. And what's fun about him is we almost never talk about climbing
yeah,
because he won't. I'll
yeah,
go, what's your plan when you get to the valley? And he's like, oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm going to do. And then I read about something later in the climbing press, and I'm like, dude, really? You didn't tell me you're going to do this? I wasn't sure. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
he's the complete opposite from some of the ego-driven characters. And, I have a couple friends from the UK who store their stuff here and stop in
yeah,
on their way in and way out. And they're not like that. We just have wonderful human friendships. It's
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
based on climbing.
yeah,
And climbing is like it's the last thing we get to in our conversations.
yeah, 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 yeah. I see. I love climbing. I'm obsessed with climbing, but there gets a point, and especially like when I travel to these places where there are where there is just a climbing, there's just climbers everywhere. I personally get bored of talking about climbing. I seek to talk about things other than climbing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and sometimes look forward to just moving away from the climbing world and coming back home with my family where none of them are into climbing.
No, and they don't care at
They
all.
don't
They don't
care.
care at all. All they
Yeah,
care about is he bought another carabiner. Don't you have enough?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
My
yeah, yeah, yeah,
God,
yeah,
got a garage full of carabiners.
yeah, yeah. But behind that black sheet is a wall full of gear. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm sort of, my climbing career is coming to an end, and I reluctantly maybe have to admit that my big wall climbing career is definitely over. But I've got all this stuff out there, haul bags and portal edges and all this stuff. And it's hard to get rid of though.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's
Well, you
kind of
never know,
like,
right? You never know.
yeah, I don't know. I know when I walk to the base, and my son, I climb, he's a free climber, and I climb with him sometimes. Like, the climbing doesn't hurt me, but the approaches are killing me these days.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
carrying,
okay.
I'm 60, I'll be 64 in a couple weeks, and
Yeah.
it's just not like it used to be.
Yeah. Well, get him to do the donkey work, get him to haul you up stuff.
That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, well, maybe I got one more wall in me, but oh, God, I carry that pack, and I think. And then, when I do camp or I'm up in the valley and I wake up in the morning and I think, oh, I'm so glad I'm not on a portal edge looking at 3 more days. I'm so glad I'm going to go
Yeah.
get a cup of coffee and sit in the meadow and do a
Yeah.
little free
But
climbing and go for a hike. And
yeah, I guess so. But I like, see, I love discomfort and I think well, I say love discomfort. I enjoy feeling discomfort because it makes me appreciate what comfort is, and discomfort
hmm
meaning having to physically work hard, being cold, being hungry, being thirsty, tired, like all those things or big walling when you're on the wall for 5, 6 days or however long, and then you come back down, and then you turn a knob on the wall, and hot water comes out, and you've got gas, and you can cook, and you've got a nice warm bed, and
Right.
all those things become just incredible.
It is something. It's like you're a time traveler, right? It's like you've come back from another century that didn't have these things,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
still amazed. If you haven't had them, if you haven't had a hot shower for 5 days, you cannot imagine that you can just do this.
yeah, yeah. I
Because
know.
washing your hands on a big wall is a major deal.
Yeah, I mean, cooking on the wall is a major deal. Like being able to cook, I guess, nice food for the duration of your stay on the wall
Right.
is hard work because you get to a point where you're just exhausted and you just it's just fuel.
Well, and get along with your partners is a whole nother thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I've had a couple wall experiences where we get to the top and we're not speaking and we never spoke or talked to each other again. We didn't
yeah,
even walk off the, we stopped talking halfway through. And
yeah,
I can remember climbing a wall with this guy, and we hadn't known each other. We met through a mutual friend, and he had some experience, I had some experience. It felt like we were a good match to do this wall. And so I got to the valley a day early, got all my stuff together. He shows up, we took off climbing. So, by day two on this 4 day wall, we're out of water. And I said, "Where's the water?" He goes, "Well, I had my water." I go, "That was my water." He goes, "I thought you got water for both of us." I go, "Why would I get water for you?" So he drank all the water. He drank all my Gatorade. So for 2 days, we didn't have water. We had nothing.
oh, bloody
And
hell.
we're the last night before we're going to push to the top because we're out of water. And he kept telling me all the way up, he goes, "I won't sleep on the outside of the portal ledge. I won't do it." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes,
Why
"I only
not?
sleep on the inside next to the wall." I go, "That doesn't make any sense. You're tied in, dude." "Nope, won't do it." Okay, fine. He was just freaked out by the portal edges. Like,
Right. Okay.
Big walling's not for you. But anyway, so we're on the portal, which I love. I love the nights on the portal edge, and that's the thing I miss the most is the bats and the birds and the sky opening up. It's just to me, everyone should spend one night on a portal edge, even if it's
Yeah.
15 feet off the ground. It's just an
Yeah.
incredible
Yeah.
experience. So on our last night, I'm pulling my sling bag and it flies off the portal edge out into the darkness, into the abyss. He says to me, he goes, well, I didn't like that sleeping bag anyway. It was heavy. What are you talking about? Heavy. It's like 2 pounds. And we're on a 4-day wall. We got like 500 pounds of stuff. He's like, I didn't like it. So I'm settling in for a cold night. Bundle up. It was our last night on the wall. It was spring, so I wasn't going to die. I was just going to be chilly.
Yeah.
And I knew he didn't like the being on the portal edge. So I woke up, probably dawn, and for some reason, the strap above my head had sawed through. And at 1 second, we're laying there fine. The next second, the strap broke and it fell away, and we're in space. And he is screaming, just out of his mind. And I just thought that was the greatest day I ever had on the wall. It was hilarious. Like, we're tied in short. I mean, the thing went away and we didn't move, you know?
Yeah.
And he's just lost his mind. I get it was shocking, but it was a shock that I shamefully am happy I experienced.
Yeah. 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 I guess there was some kind of I know that you felt great because he actually felt some discomfort for being so selfish on the wall.
And he's not hurt. Nothing got hurt, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we had another 2 pitches. We made the pitches. We had no water. I said, you need to start walking because I'm
Yeah.
not going to walk with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we got off at separate times and I never saw him again. But
Yeah.
we made the climb and it was, ultimately all that suffering ended up being great stories and fun campfire stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
no one
maybe.
never talks about the ones that went well, right?
No, of course not. I mean, I've got so many stories of things that didn't go well. I mean,
Right?
the story, the stuff when it goes well is it's a case of I turned up, I climbed, I got to the top, and yeah, I came
Right.
back down, and that was it.
But if it doesn't go well, the times you're going to have it going well are few and far between. It's those
Yeah.
times it doesn't go well that allow you to progress and go, okay, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah. Yeah.
things start to go smoother.
Yeah, yeah. So it's learning, isn't it? It's sort of like either something mechanically doesn't go well, and then you learn to not do that again and come up with something different, or you end up experiencing real suffering, and then the next time you're out, you might be in a similar scenario, and then you realize, actually, do you know what? I've been in this scenario before, and I've managed to survive, so that's okay. So my level of discomfort that I can cope with is grown.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Experience. It's
Experience,
just
yeah, and then
experience. Yeah.
yeah, don't panic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So, so look, the film Assault on El Cap. I've watched it 3 times.
oh, okay.
I watched it the first time I watched it was that was in maybe 2012, 2013,
Probably
something
about
like that.
then. I think it came out in, yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I watched it again.
2014.
I might have watched it 4 times. I watched it again, and then yeah, it came up on Netflix, and I put a plus on it to add it to films to watch. And it's been sat there for a while, and then at some point when we started doing this podcast, I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to talk to Mark and Richard
Yeah.
because I thought it was just such an incredible story. And having watched your film, I thought you did a really good job making that film. And I thought it was such an incredible story that inspired me to want to talk to them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's good. They're great guys. They're
Yeah.
really, really interesting guys.
Yeah,
And
and when I interviewed both of them, they were both extremely kind and down to earth.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're wonderful, wonderful guys. In fact, I've just reached out to both of them, and both of them are going to be in my next film.
Yeah. Ah,
So
cool. So what's the
yeah,
next film going to be?
can't tell anybody.
Cool. I won't ask.
All right,
I look
can't
for
tell.
so
I mean, you can't tell anybody,
no
but
no so I'm recording this, so don't tell me. Tell me after I press
okay.
pause. So
Okay.
for anyone listening out there, I'm afraid I'm not going to tell anyone.
Yeah, this
I'll
is
be sworn to secrecy. But I think what really stood out with Mark and Richard, as I mentioned, is that they're extremely down to earth, and when you talk to them, I guess when you look at Ammon, you can think, yeah, okay. When he has his Ammon McNeely persona on, you can see that yeah, he's a hard aid climber. When you speak to Mark and Richard, they are both very gentle and kind people that you would not assume the experience they have. Uh,
hmm
and yeah, and the story, I think when I did interview them, I think they didn't delve into. I think Mark talked a little bit about the Wings of Steel, but not very much. Um, and I basically wanted to talk about him as a climber and not deviate from him as a climber to make the chat about the Wings of Steel. And I think Richard, I could see in Richard that he was carrying a lot of, I guess, negativity that he hadn't been able to express for all these years, and
hmm
all the shit that he received from the climbing community for no reason based on no evidence.
Yeah. Th Those guys, they're so interesting because they're so good. They're such good climbers, but not obviously to look at them. But
Yeah.
you have to know them to know. And what I find most interesting, they are super intense about climbing and super intentional about their climbing, and everything they do is for themselves. It's all an internal competition they're having.
Yeah.
They're not dealing with the world at all when it comes to climbing.
Yeah.
This is their focus. This is
Yeah.
what they are challenging themselves with.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that separates them and makes them sort of outcast to some of the other community is the other community is so competitive. It's
Yeah.
so, what did you do? Where's your FA? Where's
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah. Yeah.
that? Are you climbing this? Blah, 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 blah. They are nothing like that.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. But
I mean,
I think it's it's hard, isn't it? I have to be really aware of myself that when I'm in a group of other climbers, that if somebody climbs harder grades than me, which so many people do, my initial feeling inside, if I'm being very honest, is feeling of inadequacy when I'm
mhm,
around people who climb harder than me.
mhm.
Yeah. And
That's just, it's human nature.
yeah, of course, but
Yeah.
there is none of that with, I guess, Mark and Richards.
No, I just look at both of them and go, they're so much more evolved than I am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still riddled with petty jealousies and envy.
I'm still learning. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. So, um, yeah. I anything.
What I am gonna re-release here pretty good in 2014, 2020, 19, 10 years ago maybe. I spent a week at El Cap on El Cap Bridge. And we did a web series called El Cap Bridge, and it was just about all the climbers who hung around there. Some famous, some not, just
Yeah.
people who show up to Yosemite and do that. So those were all little individual 7-minute segments. So I'm in the process of compiling all of those
Okay.
because that bridge scene doesn't exist anymore. The Park
Okay.
Service moved everybody off the bridge, and it was there was a magic time of about 5 years on El Cap Bridge that you could walk onto that bridge and sit down, and you might be sitting next to Alex Honnold or Hans Florine or Ron Kauk, and then you might just be sitting next to a guy who flew in from Texas who'd never climbed before and wants to climb El Cap.
Yeah.
And everybody is there sharing their equipment and experience and fun. And Tom Evans with his photographer would shoot there. It was a magic time, and we captured a lot of that. So I'm compiling that out. So that will be coming out. It's just going to go straight to YouTube sometime in
Okay.
2026.
So where can people find this video?
It'll be on my YouTube channel, which is Accidental Productions.
Okay.
And my name is on there too.
Okay.
It likely could get to our European distributor,
Okay.
um, who
What?
also has a YouTube channel and does some other things.
Yeah. Okay. What
So
I'll do is I'll put a link into your YouTube channel in the description. So if
yeah,
anyone listens to the podcast, just go to the description, find a link, and you'll be able to find, I guess, your video when it comes out. But people can also
yeah.
find Assault on El Cap.
Yeah, amongst other garbage that I throw up there.
Yeah, but
I'm not the greatest YouTube curator. I have another YouTube channel. One of the things I spend most of my time doing is I have a YouTube channel with a blues musician and we interview musicians. So that channel gets a lot of my normal attention, but
okay.
that one's called Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party. If you're interested in blues, history blues music, then that's the
What is
one
it
because we
called?
have
Mark?
Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party. Mark's
Okay.
a blues harmonica. So we've interviewed lots of people who performed at Woodstock back in the day, a lot of the older guys.
Well, if you,
So
I'll put it for anyone interested. I'll put that
yeah,
link in there as well, so people can go and have a look at that.
just part
Cool.
of my diversion from can't my ADD keeps me from staying on one genre.
Love it. So
Yeah,
it's your superpower, right?
my super yeah, I'll go to a blues show and then I'll go interview a guy in El Cap. It makes no sense as a filmmaker, but
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it keeps me interested. I just
Yeah,
follow what I'm interested.
yeah.
So.
Cool. Amazing. Really appreciate the chat, Jeff.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was wonderful.
It was really nice to chat. I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Jeff. It was nice to have a chat with him and to see his insight into his world of climbing and filmmaking and some of the stuff that he's experienced, and I guess some of the stories that he was able to tell about Ammon and his point of view on the film Assault on El Cap. If you have any suggestions on topics you'd like us to talk about or people you'd like us to interview, please feel free to email us or send us a message on social media. Until next time.